Welcome, everyone, to our exclusive Nobody Studios live stream. I'm Sejal Thakkar, your host for today's session. And today we're going to dive into the world of product development, which is, from what I've been learning about it and just kind of preparing for this live stream, it's as much of an art as it is a science, right? And oftentimes the practical insights we get are from actually being in the trenches and learning these lessons, right? When you're doing the work. So whether you're a founder or product manager or just someone who's passionate about bringing ideas to life, this is the right live stream for you. So we've got an incredible lineup of guests who are going to share their knowledge with us and their firsthand experiences. So first, I want to welcome back to our show our Chief Nobody and Visionary, Mark McNally. Welcome back, Mark.
Hey, Sejal.
Oh my God, it's so good to see you. It's been a couple of weeks since we did one of these. And I'll be honest, I've missed our conversations.
So have I. It's nice to have it as a routine, but sometimes, the calendars get in the way and it's broken up. It's like maybe sometimes you have to know what you're missing, so I'm glad to be back.
Totally. And I always learn so much from you. And I know today's conversation is going to be no different because this is outside of the realm of what I consider myself to be an expert in, or at least doing my best to be an expert in. But today we're talking about product development. So we're really grateful to have our Chief Product Officer, Connie Kwan, joining us today as well. Connie, for those of you that don't know her, she joined me on our Nobody Studios Culture live stream show. So if you didn't catch that episode or you've missed any of our prior, the making of a Nobody live stream shows, you can catch them all on our Nobody Studios YouTube channel. It's called Nobody Crowd. But Connie, she honed in her superpower at Atlassian, at Microsoft, and as a chief product officer at 4 early stage companies. She's had 3 successful exits. She has over 17 years of product leadership experience that spans a whole bunch of different functional areas: AI, blockchain, digital health, energy, hard tech, and software. And so, Connie, you've been a valuable asset to our leadership team. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for bringing me on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. So can you share a little bit more? I love I found on when I was learning a little bit more about you. Can you share a little bit more about how you became the product whisperer and what led you to joining our Nobody Studios journey?
Well, my background was in engineering, so I inherently love building. My favorite toy when I was a kid was Legos. So I just like building things. And product management is a really interesting role where it's not just the building function, but it's all the aspects that allow the building to happen, right? It's understanding who's going to buy the product that we build, is understanding how we're going to finance and make this a profitable and sustainable business. And then it's also about the building part. So I love I always think about when I talk to product managers, it's like the wheel and spoke, right? It's like you have to be there in the center to understand all the pieces and kind of orchestrate the whole thing. So I really enjoy the product role for that particular reason.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about what led you to Nobody Studios, to joining our journey as our Chief Product Officer.
Yeah. Well, I came through you, Sejal, and then you introduced me to Mark. And I just love the vibe here. I've been already, after I left Atlassian, I went to a startup and then decided to diversify and work for multiple startups as a consulting fractional CPO. And after doing that for a while, I'm like, hey, it would be really nice to have a core team where we can do that together. And so I started looking for folks that are doing that. And Nobody Studios is one of the very strong folks in that space where we're building 100 companies in 5 years, right? So super high velocity studio and a very fun and cool and obviously extremely talented and experienced crew as well. So when I met everybody here, I was like, yep, this is the place.
Well, I'm so glad. And quick shout out to Kimberly Weefling, who's been a supporter of the studio from early on. She was the one that actually told me about Connie. So, hey, Kimberly.
Thanks, Kimberly.
So product development is obviously needs to start with a solid foundation in the initial planning phase. And so, Mark, as someone you've been very instrumental in sort of steering our product vision from the ground up. So can you talk to us a little bit about what, having that strong product vision, how that influences the success of a product or even at least increases the likelihood that it'll succeed, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think referring to it as product development at a startup is kind of like sounds very corporate, like it's a division within the Fortune 500 company that does a thing. I actually think startups are all about product development. I really think that having a vision for what you're trying to create and making some of the really hard calls about what you have to build versus what you might like to build at some point um, is really the art of a startup. I think being able to look at a product and immediately being able to envision how you would market that and who that customer is. Like, again, the product vision is a lightning rod for everything that a startup is going to have to go do. I really, truly believe that. And when I've looked at all the startups that I've been a part of and, I've been fortunate to see some successes, but I've also seen my share of failures. And the failures 100% can be attributed to a wandering product roadmap or a really too broad of a roadmap or not being super clear of what is the most important thing to build, so you're chasing a lot of different things, or those lots of different things are indicative of the fact that you actually don't know exactly who your customer is. And so I truly believe I can look at an early stage company, and if I can't understand a very concise product vision, then it's an indication of trouble down the road. And it's okay to be that way for a while. And some startups do that. But my anxiety level goes up with time if we're not getting into a spot where like, that's it. And everything else becomes, kind of aligned behind that product vision. So I would elevate, product vision to one of the most important things. And, people talk about startup success, and, I certainly believe that team is a big part of it, and, timing and other things. But the only way you have the right team, and the only way if you're timing yourself right, is if you have the right vision to begin with. It's not the other way around. You're not saying, okay, I got this great team and here's the timing, what should I build? It's like you have a vision for what you're trying to build, and then you can assess, do I have the right people to do it? And this is the right time to do it. So I actually just think product is critical, and it's something that I think we have a lot of great inherent skill sets and instincts within the studio, and I'm proud of that. But it's an area that I think that we just can be so much better, and so it'll be an area that 10 years from now, I think we'll be striving to become better at. So,
Yeah, Connie, did you want to add anything to what Mark just said?
Yeah, 100% agree with what Mark is saying. Product direction is really tough nut to crack, right? That's why startups are so risky, because there are so many things you can solve within any domain area, and choosing the slice that we want to go after and being really committed to that slice is really tricky and really important, because otherwise we get distracted by all the other possible slices we can go after. And there's a lot of competition, and anywhere you go, everybody's going to be there. And especially if it's a growing area like AI, right? So the question always comes down to, from the customer or from the investor, like, why you? Like, why this particular one? Because I have 10 other options. So the value prop needs to basically answer everything that the customer wants for a specific type of customer, for a specific profile of customer. So we have to get very clear about who are we selling to and what is the thing we're selling. And with that, we can line up the timing and the team, as Mark has mentioned.
Yeah, and there's so many different pitfalls, right? When you're setting up the initial product planning, which is a critical time, right? That's where you're making all these key decisions that are going to shape the future of that product. So there's a lot of things you need to do in the initial steps, but then there's a lot of pitfalls that you can run into in early stage product development, right? So both of you have tons of experience on bringing products to market. What are some of these pitfalls? And talk to the leaders out there, to the founders that are listening. How could some of these pitfalls be avoided?
Yeah. I was thinking about this going into it. And I have a saying that I will repeat. Some have heard of it many times, but I'll lead up to it. I've got a couple of friends who are very, very successful senior recruiters, doing super high level recruitment, right? And people who do that, placing CEOs of Fortune 2000 companies, et cetera, they all have this common saying that there's three things that you decide when your talent, the three of you or the three of us are are people who could be, shopped around and placed in lots of different places. If they were talking to you, they'd say, okay, there's three main factors: title, compensation, and location. You get to pick two. So what matters to you? What is most important? Is it your title and your compensation? Great. You're going to be in North Dakota. Is it I need to be in Southern California? Great. That's your priority. But now you get to pick compensation or title, but you don't. So it's this idea that there's trade-offs is basically the point, right? And I think that that's super, super relevant in product, except there's probably 100 things and you got to pick one. And I always tell my teams in product, you have to figure out what is the feature that's going to pay for the rest. And that makes a lot of sense in my head. But what it means is, as product people, and I go back to my early part of my career, it's really easy to brainstorm, this awesome, really exciting roadmap. And you can imagine the customer, interacting with your product in 5 years and bells and whistles and features. A lot of those features are nice to haves, but what is the thing that's going to get you there? Like, what is the thing that a customer is going to go, oh, that one thing changes my world and I'm willing to pay for it? And you focus on that first and foremost, because if you get that customer hooked on that feature and you do that feature really, really great, then you allow yourself the right and you pay for the ability to build all those other creature comforts around the product down the road and all these ancillary features and this, other product experience part. But I think as an early product person, I couldn't do anything but envision the full rollout of the product and how I envisioned it. And I didn't appreciate that was multiple layers of financing and years and years and years of customer interaction to get to that point. And I really, truly believe that our team, especially since we're focused on the extreme early stage and grabbing something from the whiteboard, you 100% have to brainstorm where you're trying to go, because it helps you make sure you don't paint yourself into a corner, and it helps you understand the vision of the company. But then you have to say, okay, cool, stop, go back to the product. What is a core feature or handful of features that are going to have the most value for a customer, that's going to make them want to pay for something and is going to become this obsessive, this product rocks, I can't wait to use it again, I'm going to tell my friends about it. Like, what is that set of features? And I think that's just absolutely critical in the early stage.
That's I love what you're saying. And Mark, can you share an example of a situation or maybe a startup that you've worked on, or just something that people would know about, just to kind of help explore, elaborate on what you're saying? Because I think that's critical.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're all really excited about Avalify as one of our companies right now in the portfolio. And it's a great example. Originally the roadmap and the vision was very, very broad, and we let it kind of be, we were comfortable letting it be broad because we're trying to understand the boundaries of where we could go, right? When you're trying to figure out intellectual property within a technology space that could go from investors to the legal folks using the product, you can imagine, probably 100 different forms of that product. And it could be very enterprisey and it could be very complicated and technical, right? But we figured out the boundaries of what that feature set would look like. But when we decided to actually build the product, I would say there were more than a few uncomfortable debates that forced us to say, great, all that stuff we're talking about is great, put it aside. We are building this one thing which does allow people to upload their deck, have AI extract the features of the product you're trying to build, score that against 180 million patents, and we're going to give people a report that tells them with a score and concise English language, what is the risk, the IP risk of the product you're trying to build. And that was starting to narrow down, like all other things we wanted to do someday. Yep, not bad ideas, has nothing to do with what we're launching. And then we actually got to one, I think the breakthrough for us, and this is one of the tools I like to bring more and more into what we do in an early stage. The breakthrough was, I forced the team, I said, okay, grab a whiteboard right now and mock it up. And it was ugly and it made no sense, but we were trying to say, well, it could be here, it could be there. This is what the customer would get. And we said, great, now go get an artist and have them redesign it in a couple of days. So within a couple of days, we got a mock-up of what we thought someone was going to get if they uploaded a deck. And we imagined all the technical stuff that was going to happen behind the scenes, but that wasn't the point. We imagined what a customer would get. And once we could look at that mock-up, even though it's radically different today from that mock-up, the mock-up was directionally right. And everybody in the room, including the technologists, the marketing people, the biz dev people, everybody in the room could look at that mock-up and go, oh, I get it. That's cool. Customers are going to love that. Let's do that. And it aligns so much effort. And we probably came back to that mock-up 20 times in the course of the 9 months of the MVP build to remind ourselves that this is the thing that pays for the rest. We have a big vision for where it can go, but getting this right gets a company in the market. We'll get early traction. We'll get revenue. We'll have customers that love us, and we'll have a right to keep doing other stuff. But we have to get this right first.
Absolutely. Great example. I love that because I was going to ask you about Evalify anyway, because I think the part of this conversation also talks about IP, right? And so, but Connie, I definitely wanted to come back with you on that question and wanted to hear your perspectives about pitfalls that we see, in the early stage product development, and what are some strategies or ways that these can be avoided?
Yeah. So I have 3 rules for early stage product. The first one is build painkillers, not vitamins. The second one is don't overbuild, get to message market fit before product market fit. And then the third one is get out of the building. And I have an example of my own naivete over 10 years ago when I built a startup of my own. And I broke 2 of those 3 rules. I did get out of the building, meaning I did go talk to customers. We did get some traction with Blue Shield. It was a product to help people eat better, right? So it was the food equivalent of the pedometer that everybody was giving out at the time. So the health insurance took notice, and we had some potential deals going with them. So I did get out of the building, but it was a painkiller, not a vitamin for a lot of them. And then I couldn't quite get to the vitamin part. Oh, sorry, I couldn't get quite to the painkiller part. It was a vitamin. And so they were very interested. That's the thing. It's like a very fake signal. It's like people will get really excited because they like vitamins. And they think that's a great idea, and they want to support you as founder and want to be encouraging. So they're like, this is so great, it's so great. But then when it gets to the point where you're like, can you pull out your wallet and pay for this? Well, I don't know. I don't really have a pain around it. So no thanks, right? So the painkiller part, I didn't quite crack. And then the other part was I ended up, building a lot more than I needed to, because I didn't get to message market fit first, right? I had a fully blown product in a year that we spent on it. We had a fully blown product, but we didn't have enough customers. We had like one, we had another one that was interested. We should spend a lot more time selling the potential of what it could be and getting customers there first. So we didn't get the message market fit. And these are related, right? The message market fit has to be around pain rather than vitamins. And then getting out of the building to promote that and making sure that it actually resonates before any building any construction of the product itself happens has to be the right order. And so I violated those rules, learned better, and now those are my rules to stick to for early stage products.
Great. I love those. Those are, I love how you talked about all 3 of them and gave us the example. I think that really helps people as they're sort of defining their roadmap, right? Because I think it's not just a tool, it's a necessity that we stay flexible, but also have certain kind of rules that we follow that are going to help us keep us on track. And so, one of the articles I read last night really caught my attention, and it really applies to Nobody Studios, because we have this progressive model that we like to follow as we're building our companies. And so one of the misconceptions I read about when I was reading this article, it talked about how, in product development, if you just add more resources to a project, that'll speed up the process, right? And the article talked about this belief that more input equals more output, which might hold true in some industries, but can really be misleading in the product development area, right? And so I kind of wanted to get your perspectives on that misconception, and maybe you can talk about how that's never going to fly for us at Nobody Studios, given the model that we follow.
More input equals more output, meaning throw more darts at the wall,
or throw more people into the mix, right?
Throw more features on the backlog. That's a clear sign for failure.
I mean, garbage in equals garbage out jumped out at me when I was reading that article.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go back to what I said. If you've got a very clear vision of what you're trying to build and you've made some of the tough choices, sometimes resources are great. Mm-hmm. I think that resources are a nightmare if you're still trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, because you get more people in the room, more cooks in the kitchen. You watch this crazy amount of wandering. Nobody knows exactly where we're supposed to go, so you can't say anybody's wrong. And so you watch this, just directional pull, and it kind of tears you apart. But I think if you can be laser focused on what you're trying to create, then it does become a matter of, how can we build that as fast as possible? And sometimes that's resources. I think it's an illusion, though, to think it's always a resource problem. Sometimes you just need to give a really smart person space and let them build something great, But yeah, I think that's probably a slippery slope to think that resources are the answer.
Yeah, it's true. I think constraint creates creativity, right? If you give someone a blank page and you say, draw something, it's going to be very hard for that person to draw something. But if you say, draw something that looks like a flower, then suddenly they can draw 1,000 pictures for you, right? So that's a constraint that, and resource constraint is a constraint, right? So when we're forced into certain situations because there are rules, then we can play that game well, and we can create, and we can thrive. So I think if, you can build anything under the sun with infinite dollars and infinite team, wow, I'm just going to be deer in the headlights. I don't know what to do with this. But if we say, look, you have this much time, this much dollars, you have to build something in this space, the solution for this person. Oh, okay, well, I can work with that. I can draw flowers. So I think it actually creates more creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's also, a question that some people are probably wondering and I want to give a shout out to the people that are joining. Thank you, Dr. Zanzi McLaurin. Appreciate you signing on today and supporting this conversation. She says she's loving the strategies that we're sharing. But, one of the questions I wanted to ask both of you is, we have a certain process that we follow, the progressive process, but for some people, if you don't know what that process is, we've talked about it on several of our live streams. But one of the things I thought was important to at least share with people is what are some, as we're kind of going through our product roadmap, Connie, what are some key performance indicators, that we should, as a studio, we're looking at that might be critical for us to focus in on as we're sort of moving to make sure we're staying on track, right? So generally speaking, what are some, key performance indicators that we're concerned with at the studio?
Yeah. For early stage, the 3 rules, right? Is it a painkiller, not a vitamin? Don't overbuild. Message market fit, get out of the building. So the metrics are around those. So get out of the building is, have we talked to some customers who could potentially buy this if it's a B2B? Have we shown this concept to some consumer customers if it's B2C, right? Like, have we given them some way to sign up to a wait list so that we can start building some early traction, some early indication that this is enough of a painkiller for them to give up an email address. Now, that's not a true indicator that is a painkiller, right? But there's some interest. It could still be a vitamin. But then a conversation might reveal, oh, okay, well, we thought often I walk into a user discovery call and I have a theory about what I'm selling, but then I keep it open and they end up telling me that is something else entirely. We thought we were selling a service to help someone run their practice for ketamine clinic, but turns out they need some help with insurance, for example, right? So, it's getting out of that building and making sure we make those connections and listen to that market. Those are the KPIs. Is can we build some market traction that leads us to believe that this is the right direction to focus in?
Yeah. Thank you. And Mark, did you want to add anything to that? I mean, I just want to add this other dimension, right? And then Mark, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too, is both of you have said this throughout their live stream today, is building that great team, right? So one of the KPIs or indicators that we look at too is, we know that we can't succeed unless we get that right team together, right? So making sure that we're looking at, is the team the right people, but also are they able to navigate through the product roadmap or anything that might come up, because there might be something unexpected that might pop up, and are they able to be agile and flexible as we move to the next stage of the process, right? So Mark, I'd love to hear your thoughts on if there's any other key performance indicators that we're looking at.
I mean, to take what you just said, there about team, I think it's also one of the reasons why the product vision is so important, right? So if you get the product vision articulated early and you're really locked in on it, right? And again, the difference is if you're just wandering around problem statements, right? Like this is kind of a problem we think we want to solve. How you solve it is really important. So you still have to lock in on what are you selling customers, right? We can all talk about a problem. We can say, oh, the problem is healthcare is too expensive. Great. We're so excited about that problem. There's about 1,000 ways to tackle that problem, right? And how you're going to go about tackling that problem has a direct impact on the team you have to recruit. And, I think as a startup founder, many times over, speaking of myself, we tend to recruit people that will just be excited about the problem that we're trying to solve and, reinforce kind of our ideas. And you need that, right? It's like survival. You need to have people who will bounce things off of. But if you go too far down the building process, even the fundraising process and selling a vision, and it's too much around problem versus solution problem, that kind of combination. Again, you could go 1,000 ways with solving healthcare is too expensive. Until you lock in on how you're going to actually solve it, you don't know the team you need. Right. So I really go back to my statement of having that mock-up of that early product. Once you have that, why I love mock-ups is it makes everybody on the team interpret their job. The technologist will look at a mock-up and go, oh, I know what you want me to build. A marketer will look at a mock-up and go, oh, I know who the customer is. Like every element, someone can look at that mock-up and understand the business. That's what I believe. And so when you get to a team, the most successful teams, in my opinion, are you're very clear on the product and the strategy of going to market, and you know exactly who you need to recruit to make sure that strategy is executed. You get closer and closer to, we talk about product market fit and message fit, and there's something around like team vision fit, I think that's massively important. So yeah, I do think team is critical, but when I see good people, smart people misfit and executing incorrectly, people aren't wrong. You just recruited the wrong team for the vision.
Like how you put that. Thank you. Yeah. So look, we're almost at time, but I do have one more question for both of you. Both of you have had such successful, several different successful product launches. And so what is one lesson that you can share with founders or startups that are, looking, in that process, wherever they are in their journey, that you've learned from your successful product launches that you can share? One lesson each. Connie, go first.
Well, it's my 3 rules, really. Get out of the building, right? I think get out of the building, I can't emphasize enough. Even PMs on my team, I'm like, get out of the building. Spend 50% of your time with customers. And that's a stretch goal, but having that stretch goal is really important. It's so easy to just sit in the home and build your own thing because that's the easy thing to do. But get out of the building.
It's too easy to fall in love with your own idea, right? It becomes your little baby, and then you get stuck, and you just want to keep pushing forward, right?
Yeah. Other people say like you're not the customer, right? Like say, there are many phrases to point to the same thing of get out of the building.
Awesome. Thank you, Connie. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I think specifically to your question about a product launch, I think what you're looking for in a product launch is, and that even terminology is kind of more like 1980s, but, the idea that you build up and you put something out there and you watch a result, right? I actually think product launches from the very beginning of you playing with an idea, right? And so in the old days, you would build something and you'd launch it and you thought you were right and you were then trying to drive numbers. I actually believe that starts in the very beginning, and you have to listen to that signal, right? So I've got ideas that I'm really passionate about. I have strong conviction of. Some of them are taking off in terms of people loving them and giving us great feedback, and you can feel that pull. You're like, oh, we have to build that faster. The market wants that, and others aren't taking off. And that is either one of two things. You're wrong about your instincts on that product, or you haven't put it out there in a way that people are able to give you the pull, right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the ideas I believe in that haven't taken off yet are usually the latter. We just haven't put it in the right environment yet. We haven't articulated yet. So we have no way of actually getting a proper signal, but it forces you into that before you build too much. to say, okay, then let's articulate it properly and let's stick it in the right vehicles in the right environment so we can see if people are actually reacting it to the way we have it in our head. And so I do believe that the product launch, celebration comes from looking at those signals early and forcing yourself to do the right things to get those signals. And it's probably another way of saying what Connie said is like get out of the building, but it's like if you talk to the right people and you see the excitement, you see the customer demand, you see people willing to say, oh my God, when is that gonna be ready? I totally pay for that. Like you see those signals, then those are the things you want to double down on and go build a product for, right?
100%.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I was just going to add, I think it's just it comes back to building that great team, right? I think no startup can succeed without a dedicated and skilled team. But I like what you said, Mark. It's about having that clearly defined vision up front and then recruiting the team, right? So that everybody knows, because again, when you put different, if people are not clear, or that's some of the things we talked about, right? And the other point I just wanted to highlight, I love what you said, both of you, is talking about that focus on solving a problem, right? It's you have to address a problem that's important to the audience or the people that we're targeting, right? So great tips, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We had some great conversation on product development, and we'll be back next Friday with another inspiring conversation with Mark. So join us again next week. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark.